Hi, this is Cory McCarthy, and welcome to a new episode of Fit, Formidable, and Fantastic. That's right. Go F yourself, and happy Meatless Monday. Now, I uh, I know I've covered this topic before in one way or another, directly or indirectly, but the bullshit woo-woo prevails, and I've been recently asked by a viewer to address it by video once more. So, here we go. Now, a lot of vegans have this almost cult-like fear of fat intake. It's rivaled only by fear-mongering towards protein intake. There's a lot of myth and bullshit out there, so I can understand why the confusion would be abundant. You know, eat this, not that, not this, not that, but eat this instead or that. It is confusing. I understand that. So, you may be asking, how much fat do I really need? How much fat should I be eating, and why? Well, I want to start by saying that I'm not prescribing you go overboard. I'm not prescribing extremes here. Let's look at the minimums, shall we? Now, research on both men and women from 2013 and 1987 papers respectively show that diets below 20% of calories from fat result in sex hormone decline. Yes, decline. In women, the decline was nearly a 14% drop in estrogen levels and a nearly 19% drop in free testosterone. I want to emphasize free there. In men, a 12% drop in total serum testosterone levels and a 10% drop in free serum testosterone levels. But also there were drops in DHT, 3-alpha-androstenediol, androstenedione, DHEA, SHBG, and LH. So in other words, diets below 20% of calories from fat appear to make you basically, let's be blunt here, a weak, soft, limp-dicked motherfucker in the case of men with low-ass sex drive. Doesn't sound too appealing to me. So from this, we can ascertain that fat should not drop below 20% of your daily calories, whether you're a male or a female, which really isn't that high. So let's put this in perspective with some hard numbers. Let's say a 170-pound male maintains size, strength, and health function at about 2,550 calories per day, which falls directly in the middle of Lyle McDonald's suggested maintenance range by weight, for instance. This theoretical male would only need a minimum of 57 grams of fat per day, roughly speaking. That isn't really that much, especially if you were to consider that a high-fat diet, or also known as a ketogenic diet, would prescribe 170 grams for the same male at that weight, at that same caloric intake. That's 113 grams lower than what is considered high fat. So basically, perspective's awesome, isn't it? But what if you're an athlete? Do you need more? Well, a peer-reviewed paper from 2014 that actually involved nutrition expert Alan Aragon, who's very esteemed, you can Google him, suggests a range of 15 to 30% of fat intake from calories for natural pre-contest bodybuilders. I want to emphasize that they're natural. So we're not talking about people who are geared up and juiced to the gills. So if anyone wants to throw out there, well, what if they're on steroids? Natural pre-contest bodybuilders. So at a time when they're trying to maintain muscle and lose fat, a very precise time for a lot of bodybuilders trying to dial in. Now, given the studies I presented before, I would still not suggest you go below 20%, which falls right in that 15 to 30 suggested range. But for athletes, it might even behoove you to raise that up to even 30%. This would be for the goal, of course, of mass and strength maintenance at the very least, while trying to cut down on body fat. So experiment and see what you respond best to, but I would stick to the research suggestions. Thus, what I'm trying to say here by research suggestions is none of this 5%, 10 or 10% calories from fat that you hear in all this extremist fad bullshit diet programs that are available, especially within the vegan world. I see a lot of that. You know, I only eat 5% of calories per day from fat, or I only eat 10% of calories per day from fat. ignore the fad bullshit. Not unless you like a crash in your sex hormones. Maybe you want that, but I wouldn't suggest it. For quality of life and sexual function, mood and everything. So many reasons why. For instance, I've told you in many videos before that testosterone replacement therapy is a valid medical treatment because low testosterone is a pretty serious medical condition that can have a lot of negative side effects, physical, psychological, mental, etc. So unless you want that crash in your hormones, which will negatively impact more than just your ability to perform in bed, but also your ability to build or maintain strength and muscle, I would suggest you don't follow any of that fad bullshit. Now, hormones aside, fat is also necessary for brain function, skin and hair health. It is also vital for the absorption of vitamins, nutrients, and phytochemicals from the fruits and vegetables you eat. Have you ever heard of the term fat soluble before? Well, that right there is precisely it. Like with vitamin D, for instance, fat helps you absorb some of these fat-soluble vitamins and minerals. It'll help you, especially when you're having a meal, and you take, for instance, a multivitamin, for instance. That's why some multi should be taken with a meal, because it helps you absorb the nutrients better, especially those that are fat-soluble. So moving forward here, this goes just beyond hormone health, as you can see. Now, you may be asking, how much saturated fat can or should I be consuming? So we're not just talking about fat here, but the saturated content. Well, the U.S. dietary guideline appears to be 10% of daily calories, whereas the American Heart Association recommends no more than 7%. So I'd say stick within that 7 to 10% of daily calorie range from saturated fats to maintain proper health. And for that theoretical 170-pound guy, that would be approximately 20 to 28 grams of saturated fat per day, which is about half or a little less than half of the minimum suggested total daily dietary fat intake for proper hormone health that we discussed previously. Now, saturated fat is even linked in research to improved testosterone values. In a 1998 piece of research, it was noted that weight-trained males who consumed less saturated fat had lower levels of testosterone than those consuming higher levels of saturated fat. Again, I don't recommend going overboard or extreme. That is not what I'm suggesting here. But definitely here to getting some, that suggested guideline range of 7 to 10% daily calories from saturated fat intake. Because it is going to play a role in your hormone values. So, like I said, don't go overboard. Let's stick to suggestions here. Let's not take my words out of context. It is also worth noting that incorporating adequate fat into your diet can also help with feelings of satiety. Sorry, it's late and I'm tripping over my words here. According to a 2008 study, fat intake when combined with higher protein intake reduced hunger and lowered overall food intake. This was in comparison to medium intake carbohydrate diets, so diets with higher carbohydrates as opposed to this diet which was higher in fat and lower in carbs, which sounds more like a ketogenic diet. The latter benefit of reducing overall food intake would also be worth noting for when you are dieting. So perhaps in a caloric deficit, shoot for that upper end suggested range of fat intakes. I mean, go for the 30%, go for the full out 30% as opposed to 20%. And for those of you wishing to embark on a higher fat diet, some people do, and I mean, I've used ketogenic before, so like the ketogenic diet, it is worth noting that a vegan approach to the ketogenic diet has been shown to not only help reduce body fat levels by up to 4 kilograms, which is nearly 9 pounds, during one 4-week study in 2009, but also reduce LDL, or the bad cholesterol concentrations, and reduce blood pressure by 1.9 to 2.4%. Again, that was a vegan approach to the ketogenic diet. So this appears in contrary to the research on non-vegan ketogenic diets, demonstrating that the outcome of a vegan ketogenic diet, it actually healthfully differs. So, isn't veganism awesome? Even in the ketogenic realm. This is especially good news for people suffering from epilepsy, which the ketogenic diet was initially utilized for to improve their quality of life. And there is research going way back on that. You can Google to find some. I've even linked some down below, at least one piece down below in the description. And they can still utilize keto, but by taking a vegan approach, they can also improve markers of their health. It's a total win for them and the animals. So now, I do want to draw your attention to one more important thing now that I've mentioned this the vegan ketogenic approach. In this study on the vegan ketogenic diet, the subjects were consuming 23% more fat than what I've demonstrated earlier as the minimum for health. And despite that higher fat level intake per day, they still witnessed weight loss, which I've discussed in previous videos is really a matter of caloric intake versus expenditure. They also experienced a drop in bad cholesterol and reduced blood pressure. So I'm re-emphasizing those points. That demonstrates two things. One, that fat intake does not inherently make you fat. And two, 20% fat, even 30%, isn't really all that much. And you can go even higher on a vegan diet and not suffer ill consequences from it. So there you have it, directly from various pieces of research and experts in the field. Maybe this message will finally get the fuck out there, circulate, and kill off the fear-mongering and bullshit, and I won't need to do any more fucking videos on this, and won't get any more fucking requests to do videos on fat intake. But, you know what, I'm not going to get my hopes up. Anyway, if anyone wants to add something to this or would like to ask some questions, whatever, please do drop it in the comments below. Otherwise, I will see you guys on Friday for a regularly scheduled episode. Until then, stay fit, stay formidable, and stay fantastic. See you around.